Welcome everyone. It is now 6:30 and Monday, February 22nd for the City Council regular meeting. This City Council meeting is being held via Zoom, an online conferencing application, and available to the public at any time. All City Council members and City staff are participating from remote locations, and the meeting will continue as long as there's a quorum. Please allow one person to speak at a time, and we'll call on every member to make sure you have had an opportunity to ask questions. I will now ask City Clerk Renteria to start a roll call, please.
Mayor Guerrero.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Burisma.
Here.
Councilor Farmer.
Here.
Councilor Henry.
Here.
Councilor Restucci.
Here.
Councilor Hicks.
Here.
City Manager Casey.
Apologies, I was trying to get off mute there. Present.
City Clerk Renteria, I am here. Finance Director Alba.
Here.
Fire Chief Anderson.
I'm here.
Police Chief Escalera.
Here.
Public Works Director Fisher.
I'm here.
Okay, Mayor, we're all here.
Thank you. Up next, we have scheduled public comments. And is there anyone in the Zoom meeting who'd like to speak? Please state your name and city of residence, and we'll start the clock for 3 minutes. Okay, hearing none. Mr. Casey, did we get any public comments as far as email, voicemail, letters?
We did not receive public comment in writing in advance, no.
Okay, thank you very much. Up next in our agenda tonight is the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes for the January 26, 2021 special meeting, approval of the minutes for the February 1st, 2021 workshop, approval minutes of the February 8th, 2021 regular meeting, approve payroll vouchers numbers 118874 through 118883, and wire transfers as listed for $403,729.11 for the period ending on February 10th, 2021. Claim vouchers, approved claim vouchers numbers 100717 through 100772, and wire transfers as listed for $281,390.30 for the period ending on February 10th, 2021. Approved claim vouchers numbers 100773 through 100805, and wire transfers as listed for $66,153.92 for the period ending on February 17th, 2021. Council members, I will now go down the list and see if there's any item you'd like to pull or questions on the consent agenda. Councilor Burisma.
I have none.
Councilor Restucci.
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
My apologies, Deputy Mayor Burisma. I'm still getting used to it, sorry.
I understand.
Councilor Henry.
No question, sir.
Councilor Hicks.
No questions.
Councilor Farmer.
No question.
Okay, I don't have any questions either. What is the desire of council on this item?
I'll move to approve.
Second, this is Jim Restucci.
Move, was that Councilor Hicks?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, motion by Councilor Hicks, second by Councilor Restucci to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, I will now ask the city clerk to start the roll call vote.
Mayor Guerrero.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Burisma.
Yes.
Councilor Restucci.
Yes.
Councilor Henry.
Yes.
Councilor Hicks.
Yes.
Councilor Farmer.
Yes.
Mayor, you have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Up next, we have our active agenda, which our first item is going to be gang prevention and intervention agreement. Consider approving a resolution authorizing the city manager to review the agreement with the Sunnyside School District to fund the gang prevention and intervention program for 2021 in the amount of $35,000. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. appreciate the opportunity to bring this forward to you tonight. With Chief Escalera, we also have representing the Sunnyside School District, I believe, Mr. Douglas Rogers. Yep, I do see him here live with us. Both are available if you have questions. And as it happens this evening, the school board is also having a meeting at the same time. But we had talked with Superintendent McKay, and he also lends his support to this. This is a renewal of an ongoing partnership between the city and the Sunnyside School District to help reduce gang activity, prevent youth from joining gangs, and then intervening as well. It's been a strong partnership for a number of years now, and staff are recommending its continuation. I'd like to invite either Mr. Rogers or Chief Escalera to share any further details they'd like to with council, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Well, good evening, everybody. I guess I'll start a little bit here. The gang prevention model that we have here, an intervention agreement, has been very successful over the last several years, and it took a while for this to get going, obviously, because of the trust factor. The trust factor is the hardest thing to overcome. It is the number one factor that the school liaison works on a daily basis, and has been very effective. And all of the folks that we've had in place there have been effective in building this slowly but surely. So it is something that that they handle from dealing with at-risk youth to commitments throughout the summer, and commitments during the school year, of course. But there's also some great intel that comes from this, and in order for the prevention officer to step in and hopefully counsel these youth away from perhaps some very devastating consequences in their life. So I really am very impressed by what they have done over the years, but more so in the last couple of years, and their outreach, and the way they've been able to really connect with these kids. And there's just more good things to come from it. So I'm certainly supportive of all that they do there.
Sure, and this is Doug Rogers, if I may add some to that as well. We're just really thankful for this partnership. Our liaison has done such a tremendous job. We have had some difficulties in the past year with the pandemic, but there's some silver lining with that. He has really been able to maintain contact virtually with many of our students, especially our middle school students. And as kiddos are coming back, I think he's meeting with about 30 kids a week at the middle level, which has been just tremendous benefits. He shares with me a success story probably every week. So we're hoping to continue this partnership. We think it's great for our schools. It's great for our community. There's been great communication, and hopefully we can keep improving and maintain.
Thank you for sharing that. And we'll go down our list of council members and see if there's any questions or comments on this item. And we will start with Councilor Henry.
No questions. I just one comment. I think it's a great service we've been doing as long as I've been on council, so I'm definitely in support of it.
Deputy Mayor Boersma.
Yeah, so the only thing I have to say is this is something that obviously both our police department and our school district feels is important and has been successful. And I think we as a body need to support this. And, we're for the betterment of our young people in our town, and not just let them loose. So I'm 100% in favor of this.
Councilor Restucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to agree with my colleagues. This is a great program. It's the other legs of the stool. We obviously spend a good portion of the general fund in the suppression efforts, and so we need intervention and prevention efforts as well. I wholeheartedly supported this. As the author of the GFI legislation over 10 years ago now, I wholeheartedly support these things. These programs are so important for our schools, and for us to show these kids that there is another way, that they don't have to do the gang route in order to be successful. So I wholeheartedly support it. I encourage my colleagues to do so.
Councilor Farmer.
I would agree with the importance of the program. I do have a couple of questions.
The first one is, what fund does this money come from?
I believe this is out of the Law Enforcement General Fund. Is that correct, Chief?
That is out of the 140, the public safety tax.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's not the general fund. It's the 140 safety tax.
I believe it is. Elizabeth may be able to confirm that, but I thought that's where it may come from, though.
It comes from the general fund.
Oh, is it general? Okay.
And the second question is, being the newbie on the council, who were the members of the Gang Free Initiative Committee?
Well, I think the members of the Gang Free Initiative Committee, before COVID hit, we've had representatives from the Sunnyside School District. Of course, generally two of those folks are represented. Doug Rogers is one of those. We also have the gang liaison officer that is also mentioned in the contract here that they are to be part of this program. And so he has been a very active part of the program. We also have, we're trying to renew some of our contacts from the Juvenile Justice Center. They are very vital to us, but it is very important to get a commitment from them once in a while. We also have a city council member that has been assigned to it in previous years. And of course, the police department. And then we also have Doug.
Yeah, sure. Garen Moore, our safety and security specialist, is also a member of this. And Kevin as well.
Social services.
Correct.
Claudia, what?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Not to interrupt, Chief, but I might be able to add a little bit of context for Councilor Farmer. Councilor Farmer, Deputy Mayor, or former Deputy Mayor Stremler was our representative to the GFI. Right. Now that he's gone, are you interested in serving in that role? I've served in the role, and I know Dean served in the role as well. So I don't know if you want to or not.
I would certainly be glad to.
Okay, I think that would be great, Mr. Mayor, and I would move that we appoint Councilor Farmer as the Gang Free Initiative representative for the council.
Is there no objection to appointing the Councilor Farmer for this position? You're no objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
Councilor Farmer, any additional questions for this agenda item?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Councilor Hicks?
I agree with all my colleagues. I think it's a great program. I'm all for it.
All right, thank you. And I also want to voice my support for this. Obviously, with COVID right now, I'm sure it's a little bit interesting process to try to get the youth engaged, but them being so naturally comfortable with technology, I'm thinking they're probably more engaged now if that's something that our liaison is able to maximize his time that way. So I'm full support of it, and hopefully with the involvement of technology, he's able to better engage them and be more in tune with what they're facing as far as struggles and staying out of gangs. So I definitely support this. What is the desire of council on this item?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Stucci. I move to approve.
This is Mayor Bergman. I'll second it.
Deputy Mayor Bergman?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, motion by Councilor Stucci, second by Deputy Mayor Brosma to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to review the agreement with the Sunnyside School District to fund the gang prevention and intervention program for 2021 in the amount of $35,000. Is there any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote.
Councilor Henry?
Yay.
Mayor Guerrero?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Broersma?
Yes.
Councilor Stucci?
Yes.
Councilor Farmer?
Yes.
Councilor Hicks?
Yes.
Okay, Mayor, you have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you, Council. The next item we have is our Court Security Services Contract Renewal. Consider authorizing the city manager to sign and execute a 1-year contract with PPC Solutions, Inc. for municipal court security services. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The court has taken advantage of using a security service for bailiff duties for the last several years. We recently found that we had not formally extended or updated the rate of the contract for this year. Met with them, our court administrator met with them, and obtained a proposal for services to go forward. This position provides important security both in the courtroom as well as during court proceedings. They help screen individuals as they're coming in to the court space, and then they help maintain order in the courtroom when defendants are there with both defense and prosecution. You'll see tonight we have actually two items related to court security services for you. The first is this overall annual renewal, and then we'll get to a second possible enhancement in the next item. Finance Director Alba oversees the court administrator, and if council has any questions, either of us will be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And we'll start with Councilor Farmer. Questions or comments on this item?
In looking at the costs, I think it's a very reasonable cost to have somebody in the court. So I would be for this.
Thank you.
Councilor Restucci?
I agree with Mr. Farmer. We need security in our courts, and this program's worked out well for us so far, so I would continue with it.
Councilor Henry?
No comment, sir.
Deputy Mayor Boersma?
I would agree with my colleagues. I think that this is a fairly reasonable contract, and it should be continued.
Councilor Hicks?
No, I've worked it. I'm for it.
I just have one question, Mr. Casey. Obviously, the only difference I see from, I guess, the prior contract is the rate per hour. Is that the only thing that changed? The rest of the contract stayed pretty much the same, except for the term probably and the dollar amount per hour?
That's essentially correct. The level of services is the same, one bailiff, essentially one position. The rate is what has increased. And it was last adjusted, I believe, in 2017. Yeah, 2017. So it has been over 4 years.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like it's a reasonable amount of money for obviously having security there, and it's important to have obviously security for sure. So I'm in favor of it as well. So, okay. So what is the desire of council on this item?
I'd move to approve. This is Councilor Henry.
I'll second. This is Councilor Hicks.
Okay, so motion by Councilor Henry, second by Councilor Hicks to authorize the city manager to sign and execute a one-year contract with PPC Solutions, Inc. for municipal court security services. Is there any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, I will now ask the city clerk to start the roll call vote, please.
Councilor Farmer,
Yes.
Councilor Restucci,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Councilor Henry,
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Boersma,
Yes.
Councilor Hicks.
Yes.
Mayor, you have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Up next, we have our court security services contract supplemental, 12 weeks. Consider authorizing the city manager to sign and execute a 12-week contract with PPC Solutions, Inc. for municipal court security services. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is essentially a supplemental agreement to the contract you just approved. As the court prepares to resume in-person proceedings in March, which has been a long desired milestone, we're very excited to be moving in that direction finally. One of the important considerations in reopening for in-court proceedings, it remains providing safety and security during the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of the physical layout of the Law and Justice Center, the current court bailiff, the existing one, provides security in the courtroom and is required to remain in the courtroom essentially at all times in order to both screen people coming into that particular space, but also during the proceedings themselves. However, when we reopen for in-person court proceedings, that now also opens the extended lobby area of the Law and Justice facility. And we must also maintain strict control over the number of persons in that area. And because sometimes defendants arrive at different times, it's also important to be able to provide security there. So what we've contacted Phoenix as an option is, while we're in this kind of phase 2 reopening, we'd like to bring in a second bailiff for up to 12 weeks to enable us to provide security screening as people enter the lobby, and then to manage the folks that are there in the lobby, make sure that everything stays safe and appropriate out there as well. And again, either Director Alba or I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. And we will start with Councilor Restucci.
No questions or comments, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Brosma,
I have no questions at this point.
Councilor Hicks,
No questions.
Councilor Henry,
No questions, sir.
Councilor Farmer.
No questions.
I do have one question, Mr. Casey, and so this is for a 12-week period. So if we were to go back to phase 1, would we still have to honor this contract for 12 weeks at the rate and quantity of hours that we are signing here?
We might, but here's the interesting thing about phase 1. In late January, early February, we began learning of some other courts that were attempting to open in phase 1 regions. And I sought clarification from the governor's office how that was occurring, and learned that there was a very narrow exception granted under the phase 1 restrictions on in-person meetings that were allowing courts to meet in person. However, they had to be in facilities that were already open, meaning like a courthouse in which the only function of that building was a courtroom. And I explained our situation where we have a shared facility with multiple functions, police and jail and so forth, and a shared lobby. And I was advised to seek legal advice on interpreting how the orders worked. I contacted MRSC, the lead counsel for MRSC responded and said, based on the narrow exception for in-person proceedings for courts, we could, even in phase 1, open the lobby for the purpose solely of allowing people to access the courtroom. So even if we're moved back to phase 1, we plan to continue in-court proceedings and need to keep control of the lobby. So we would still avail ourselves of this service.
Okay, I guess the second question is, it looks like it's about $5,200. And is that something we can afford? Is it something we budgeted for already?
We had not budgeted for it already. The finance director has noted that this would be something we'd roll into our first quarter budget amendment for your consideration. But it does look like, given current revenues and expenditures, we should be in a good position, certainly, to be able to absorb this overall within the general fund.
Okay, because it's always a concern that we go over our budget. We anticipate, obviously, revenues to come in, steady as we did last year, and then, who knows, something else happens. But if you feel comfortable that we can swing this, then I'm okay with it.
We think this one is certainly reasonable, and because it'll be, we'll be able to take advantage of it, whether we're in phase 1 or phase 2, and it's essential to being able to get the court back up and running. We think it definitely worth taking a look at.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will now call on council members for, actually, I already did that. So what is the desire of council on this item?
I would move to approve. This is Councilor Henry.
All seconds. Councilor Hicks.
Thank you. So motion by Councilor Henry, seconded by Councilor Hicks, to authorize the city manager to sign and execute a 12-week supplemental contract with PPC Solutions, Inc. for municipal court security services. Is there any debate on this item? Okay, hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote.
Councilor Restucci,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Brosma,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Counselor Hicks,
Yes.
Counselor Henry,
Yes.
Counselor Farmer.
Yes.
Mayor, you have 6 yes votes.
And motion passes. Thank you. And up next, we have our resolution extending COVID-19 pandemic response. Consider approving a resolution extending the proclamation of emergency and adopting findings of fact and procedures for managing the COVID-19 public health emergency. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is unfortunately becoming a perennial item on your agenda, but we are seeing positive signs that we may not need this for hopefully very many more times. This is the resolution regarding the COVID-19 emergency and the adjustments to both city operations and council operations related to the various pandemic orders. As a result of the state moving into the new roadmap for recovery framework, and then more recently in February, the county advancing, the state advancing our region and county into phase 2, that is enabling us to make some refinements to this resolution that will broaden some of the services and functions that we're able to provide going forward. As with previous versions of the resolution, we are tying our actions to the actions of the state as they either roll forward or potentially roll back. As Mayor just noted a moment ago, it is possible that if things go poorly with our COVID metrics, certain regions could be forced to go back. So this is still designed to give us the flexibility to adapt services in real time as the state makes its adjustments. Importantly, in kind of highlighting what's sort of new or adjusted in this version, call council's attention to the fact that at this point, we are authorized to reopen public customer service counters. And so we do now talk about being able to partially reopen in the section B, the service hours based on phase 1 or phase 2. We'll still be adjusting those, but we do anticipate being able to partially reopen. Second major changes I want to bring to council's attention are in section 3, council's procedures. Based on our advancement to phase 2, and the current guidance and directions related to orders, council members in phase 2 may attend council meetings or council subcommittee meetings, either in person or via telephone conferencing application, or telephone or online conferencing application. Under the miscellaneous venues guidance, we must provide all those options. Council members are not required to be in person or to be online, but we are required to provide all those options. The same thing applies for the public, which may attend in person or via telephone or online conferencing application, for the duration that we're in the current phase. So we have updated and adjusted the resolution to reflect that. And left also, that also updated for like our advisory boards and commissions. And then last, I think that's the main adjustments that we've made to this draft. Staff are working very hard to be ready for us to be able to provide support to both some in-person activity in our lobbies at the Law and Justice Center at City Hall in early March. In fact, we have representatives from the Yakima Health District coming down tomorrow for a site visit to inspect our plans and current preparations for that and provide any further direction or guidance on things that we'll need to do in order to open up. As is still consistent or the case even under phase 2, any in-person activity, all participants must be masked when inside. Will be all required, to maintain at least 6 feet of physical distancing at all times. I think with that, happy to answer any questions about the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. And we will start with Councilor Henry. Questions or comments on this item?
Sorry, no questions or comments.
Thank you.
Other than looking forward to back to going on normal track again.
Councilor Farmer.
I would echo those comments. I'll be glad to sit in a meeting with my seatmates.
Deputy Mayor Broersma.
Well, I guess as everyone knows, I've been pushing for in-person meetings for quite some time, and I'd like to have seen the lobby open a while ago. So I'm in favor of those features. I read a news report today that said that, cases are down by about 70% in the United States since the first of the year. And with that and the rollout of the vaccine, I think we're going to see cases dropping even faster. So I may be willing to extend this time, but I'm going to start to struggle. If this trend continues, I'm going to struggle to extend it once more.
Councilor Restucci.
I have to agree with my colleague, Deputy Mayor Broersma. I have a situation where I'm not going to be able to attend until I have the vaccine, until I feel comfortable attending. And that's just because I have, my wife has a compromised immune system. My father-in-law is fighting cancer. I see these people regularly. So from my point of view, I don't want to make a city employee sick. And I don't see the need for me to be there in person to conduct the business of the city. So for the time being, I'm going to be remote, and I do apologize to my colleagues. I'm more than happy to do video if they want me to do that. But at the same time, I have to be mindful about my family.
Councilor Hicks.
I'm happy to hear that we can go back to person. I fully understand other councilmen's concerns, but I'm glad to hear it.
And I know we're in talks with the city manager to give everyone that option. If you choose to be in person or via video conferencing, we want to make sure that we are respectful of your wishes and that we don't force anyone to be in a position of potentially getting infected or infecting someone else or taking it home to their family member. So we're very aware of those concerns, and we're definitely working. I know the city manager will explain to me that he's working with department heads and department staff to make sure that all those options are available for everyone to be able to participate safely, whether it's in person or remotely. So looking forward to those changes as soon as they become an option for all of us. So thank you for that. Okay, what is the desire of council on this item?
I move to approve. This is Councilor Henry.
Second.
Thank you. So motion by Councilor Henry, second by Councilor Hicks to approve a resolution extending the proclamation of emergency and adopting findings of fact and procedures for managing the COVID-19 public health emergency. Is there any debate on this item? Okay, here no debate. The city clerk will now start the roll call vote.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Councilor Henry,
Yes.
Councilor Farmer,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Broersma,
Yes.
Councilor Restucci,
Yes.
Councilor Hicks.
Yes.
Mayor, you have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next, we have Walla Walla request for support on legislation considering adopting a resolution taking a position on House Bill 1523. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're bringing this item forward for council's consideration in response to an inquiry and request from a representative from the city of Walla Walla. Walla Walla, like Sunnyside, has a transportation benefit district that they use to fund long-term transportation infrastructure renewal and replacement projects. Also, like Sunnyside, they opted to seek the approval of their voters rather for their revenue stream for sales tax increase, rather than imposing it councilmanically. Under the current law, the voter approval mechanism can be invoked twice for essentially for 2 periods of up to 10 years. What Walla Walla is seeking and has sought seeking in the legislature, and their local representative Skylar Rood is one of the co-sponsors of this. They're seeking to have that that restriction on the number of times that voters can choose to extend it removed. So it still leaves it entirely in the hands of a vote of the people, but allows the people to decide however many times they wish to pursue this. So they've asked other cities to consider supporting this. And so we've provided you some background information. And I'll ask if the city clerk can advance us to the bill report, which is that one, yes. Or sorry, that's the bill. Let's the next document, the bill report. Yeah, thank you. That gives the legislative staff's nonpartisan analysis of the bill. They may be able to answer any questions you have easier than I, but we'll certainly happy to entertain them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager. Council members, I will now ask on each one of you, so all of you, to be able to see if there are any questions or comments, and we'll start with Councilor Farmer.
I have no problem with this.
Deputy Mayor Boersma?
Well, I don't have a problem with it either. The way I look at it, I think we can extend it for 2 10-year terms, and then what do we do after that? Is this something that we as council would impose on the city? I'm much more in favor of letting people vote on this and having a say in how this goes. So yeah, I'm definitely in support of it.
Okay, Councilor Restucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm familiar with the bill, reviewing it through AWC. I support the bill, but I should be, or council should be mindful of the fact that all this does is remove the sunset clause. So basically, the same bill is still in place. When the second time comes up, we would just put it back to the voters again a third time if we wanted to. That's how I understand it, Mr. City Manager.
That's my understanding as well. It simply removes the existing sunset clause that limits the voters to 2 votes, 2 approvals, and allows them to as Deputy Mayor Boersma mentioned, it allows them to do a third or beyond that.
Understood. Yep.
It doesn't change the thresholds or the requirement that it go to the voters, just the number of times.
Right. So the voters are still ultimately making the decision. So I'm supportive of this.
Councilor Hicks?
I agree with my colleagues. I believe it should go to the vote of the people.
Councilor Henry?
No comment, sir.
Okay, and I have no questions or comments either. So what is the desire of council on this item?
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor. This is Councilor Restucci.
And I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Councilor Restucci, second by Deputy Mayor Boersma to approve a resolution taking a position on House Bill 1523. Is there any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote, please.
Councilor Farmer,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Boersma,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Councilor Restucci,
Yes.
Councilor Hicks,
Yes.
Councilor Henry.
Yes.
Mayor, you have 6 yes votes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have our city safety plan task order with HLA. Consider approving a resolution approving task order 2021-01 and authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with HLA Engineering to develop a city safety plan in the amount of $17,000. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. On this arose from last year, or I think discussion that actually began in late 2019 on potential safety improvements for guardrails along a couple of streets on the hill, Riverside and Sunnyside Avenue. We were able to identify that there were some areas where guardrails would be beneficial. And we also identified that in order to actually install and complete those projects, though, was going to be, what is the figure here, a little over $370,000. Since they are part of our transportation infrastructure, the typical way we would have to fund that out of city funds would be through our street fund or general fund. Fortunately, however, we do have another option, which is the Washington State Department of Transportation's annual city safety program. It's a grant program that will fund infrastructure projects like this designed for traffic and pedestrian safety. However, in order to be eligible to apply to that grant program, we must first develop and complete what they call a city safety plan. And DOT specifies the elements that are required in the safety plan, and those are summarized for you there on the cover sheet. We've approached our contracted engineering and contract or construction management firm, HLA. They've shown us some examples of safety plans that they have done for other cities. It is a fairly extensive document, but their quote came in at just $17,000. Which Public Works Director Fisher evaluated and felt was reasonable for the scope of work and complexity of this plan. And for the fact that if successful, it may open the door for us to gain access to a funding program that could bring in several $100,000 to the city. So with that, Director Fisher or I would be happy to answer any questions, recommend it to the council's consideration.
Thank you. And we'll start with our Councilor Henry. Questions or comments on this item?
No questions or comments on this one. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Bursman?
Yeah, I just have the one. So the expenditure of the $17,000 for the safety plan, that will get us into a position where we'll be able to get grant money in order to pay the $300 and some thousand in order to put the guardrails up and perhaps do other things as well. Is that right?
That's correct. Shane, is anything you'd want to add?
No, that's absolutely correct. Now, it doesn't guarantee us we're going to get the money, but it allows us to at least submit application towards the program.
Okay, that was going to be my next question, if it guaranteed us that. So we're putting a down payment on there and hoping we get the grant.
Correct.
Okay.
Now,
thank
the
you.
safety plan, and the safety plan, just to kind of go a little extra with, now the safety plan isn't just for this particular program. The safety plan would be in place if we wanted to seek grant funding for other types of multimodal, be it vehicular or bicycle or pedestrian mobility. That program is there and plan is in place to show that we do have and have identified safety issues. So it can be used for other programs as well.
Perfect. Thanks.
Councilor Restucci?
Shane, just real quick. So this is just a qualifying tool, basically?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Farmer?
No questions.
Councilor Hicks?
No questions.
I do have one question, Mr. City Manager. Obviously, I don't see an amount budgeted for this one. Where would the funds be coming from?
So this would be something that we would need to roll into a budget amendment out of the general fund. The street fund does have its own funding sources, but it is already heavily subsidized by the general fund. So whether we technically fund it out of the street fund or the general fund, we're probably going to be looking to the general fund. It's probably haven't said this very often. The general fund is the healthier fund right now.
Again, this is my concern of obviously not having something budgeted and obviously just recent memory, this is like our third non-budgeted item, and we're not even through February. So again, just my concern that we might be overextending ourselves a little bit, if we continue with this trend. So please keep an eye on this kind of stuff, because at the end of, we'll be doing a bunch of amendments and we might get in trouble if we don't keep an eye on some of these expenditures that are not budgeted.
Absolutely. And I don't want to steal the finance director, Alba's thunder for what we'll be presenting to you on March 1st too much, but I will share that we ended 2020 in the general fund ahead of target. We came out stronger than we had expected to, which means we're in a stronger position starting 2021 than we had budgeted or planned for, which again, we tried to be very conservative in our assumptions as we were kind of sliding into the end of the year with COVID and everything. So we are preparing to talk with you next week about kind of how we can, where we're at financially, both ending 2020 and starting 2021, and can make these recommendations right now, with a pretty stable picture.
Thank you. Okay, so what is the desire of council on this item?
I'd move to approve. This is Councilor Henry.
This is Deputy Mayor Broersma. I'll second.
Thank you. So motion by Councilor Henry, second by Deputy Mayor Broersma to approve resolution approving task order 2021-01 to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with HLA Engineering to develop a city safety plan in the amount of $17,000. The city clerk will now start. Is there any debate on this item? Okay, hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote, please.
Councilor Henry,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Broersma,
Yes.
Councilor Restucci,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Councilor Farmer,
Yes.
Councilor Hicks.
Yes.
Mayor, you have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Up next, we have our Catholic Charities Upsizing Agreement Amendment. Discuss the current upsizing agreement and new information regarding the CCHS lift station project. Mr. City Manager.
Sorry, my apologies. I'd muted while I was flipping through some papers. This is primarily a continuation of a discussion we began with you, well, actually at the end of last year. Director Fisher has provided or has developed quite a bit more information, and it's got a lot of moving parts. And so we are taking this kind of slow as we bring this developed information forward to you. At its core, originally, this was a fairly routine utility upsizing agreement for a small development off of Allen Road, where they needed to bring in a lift station and connect to our sewer lines. As we began looking at sort of the longer term, the connections of the system, the adjacent development, potential future development, we began to realize that we actually had an opportunity, given the system design and the placement of things, to increase this, the scope a bit. And in so doing, I think somebody used earlier the concept of kind of a down payment now on an investment that will pay off in the future. I think that kind of is apt here. By increasing our down payment now on sewer infrastructure, we have the opportunity in the future to essentially bring offline and eliminate several other lift stations that would otherwise be fairly expensive for us to maintain and replace down the road, and would position us more effectively, more cost effectively in the long run. I think that's about as far into the weeds I'm going to get on it. I'm going to turn over the discussion to Director Fisher, who with several of our partners, development partners and engineering firms have been working the details out on this.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. If we can go to, just real quick, go to the exhibit, Jackie. And I'll show council kind of what we're looking at here, the coverage areas. And then we'll kind of bounce back and forth here a little bit, try to keep you guys kind of tracking. So you see the triangle in red, everybody's seeing that. And the purple dot in the middle is the Catholic Charities lift station. So that's the new proposed lift station to go in. Now the yellow dot or orange dot, just east of that, just to the right, is the the outpost lift station, and that's the one that's in that's the closest proximity to the new one. So inside the red triangle, that is the $50,000 from the original agreement. That is the 50 grand that we had said we would set aside as a subsidize agreement to help them kind of offset those costs, because we also would benefit from that lift station. So when we looked at the outpost lift station, which is that dot to the right, the orange dot, we realized if we take that lift station offline, we decommission it and we connect it to the new lift station, the green area that's outlined is now the new service area for the Catholic Charities lift station, the new one. And so that's where we got, as you see on the new agreement, the green line down there, the 100,000 of additional funds that we would now put towards the lift station, because now we're serving a much larger area. Now, from those conversations, we discovered that 4 lift stations that are to the north, you see the other 4 yellow dots, 3 are inside the blue box, 1 is just outside of it. Those are 4 existing lift stations right now that we could potentially, it will take several years, to take those offline, decommission those, put in some gravity sewer main, and we can run all those lift stations down into the purple dot, which is the new Catholic Charities lift station. So in order to get that work done, in order for the Catholic Charities project to move forward, we had to put an additional $500,000 is what we're proposing towards the decommissioning of all of these lift stations. And the reason why that is significant is because we have to get the sewer infrastructure that the Catholic Charities is going to install. All that sewer main has to be really, really deep in the ground in order to pick up all that gravity sewer. And so we deepen the sewer mains to allow to pick up those lift stations at Outpost and the 4 to the north. And we also had to upsize the trunk line. So we went from an 8-inch pipe to an 18-inch pipe to make sure that we had capacity for future flows. And that 18-inch trunk line goes all the way up to the canal, Sulphur Creek. And that will allow us to pick up any future flows that come in that blue, green, and red areas. Will all give us the capacity for at least the next 20 years to serve the city of Sunnyside. So with that,
Shane, if I might just interject for a moment on that, before you jump back to the agreement, Council will also recall, and this was another driving factor in this, the yellow dot in the blue, the second one, kind of the one most in the middle, right there by the to the west of the Walmart. Council will recall that we just rezoned, and we have actually now accepted the initial permit applications for a major apartment complex development there. That was also a factor that came in as new information just in the last month. But that apartment complex, combined with some of these other activities, but that apartment complex will require us to do other improvements if we don't address it through this. And so that was another factor in kind of rethinking the scope and bringing in that blue box that Shane talks about. Is we already have an exciting housing development opportunity right at our doorstep, but that we're going to need to upgrade our sewer in that area in order to ensure that that goes forward. Sorry, Shane, thank you.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. So with that, I can answer any questions from council.
Okay, Councilor Hicks, questions, comments?
No questions.
Councilor Farmer?
No questions.
Councilor Restucci?
No questions.
Deputy Mayor Boersma?
Yeah, just one. Where's the funding coming from?
The sewer fund.
Okay. And the sewer fund has the capacity to handle that?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Councilor Henry?
No questions, just a comment of thank you for your work on this. I know you've been working hard on it, so thank you.
Just a question. So initially, when we do that original lift station, Catholic Charities, we're only going to consolidate one, which is going to be the one to the east of it. And then eventually, as time permits, we'll be looking at adding those other 4 lift stations. When we're talking years out, we're not talking 3-5 years. We're talking potentially 10-20 years. Is that correct?
No, we'd like to decommission those. I mean, I'd like to start, maybe try to get one done next year. It's just going to take time to get, we're going to have to kind of plan this out a little bit. But when we talk about the 10-year time frame and the 20-year time frame, we're talking about the life of those existing lift stations, and we would have to rebuild those in that period of time. We would love to decommission these and get these connected to the new lift station at Catholic Charities in the next 2, 3, 4 years at the most. Okay,
and that was my concern. If we are planning quite a few years out, then we want to make sure that we have that continuation of communication. If staff turns over or something happens, that we're not spending more than a bunch of money now, and then someone drops the ball in the future and this never happens, and we just invested a bunch of money in something that somebody never followed through with it. So it sounds like it's going to be a fairly reasonable amount of time for us to consolidate that and recoup that savings from having to rebuild those lift stations and having them gravity fed into this larger unit that's going to be at the CCHS build site. So that answers my question. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, it sounds like we are just, it's just a discussion item, as we are still trying to finalize some of the details with different parties involved, and we'll just keep on hearing more news from you guys, it sounds like.
That's correct. Unless council had raised some new questions or concerns tonight, we were holding off kind of going forward with finalizing some of the agreements and the structure of this. With tonight's meeting, we'll be able to proceed with that, and we're aiming to bring this back to council for potential action as early as March 8th or the 22nd if need be. But that's we'll be hopefully finalizing this in March.
Okay, thank you for that update on that project. Appreciate it. Up next, we have an executive session for 15 minutes, RCW 42.30.110, parentheses 1, parentheses G, to evaluate the qualifications of an applicant for public employment or to review the performance of a public employee. Possible action. The time is now 7:27. Jackie, if we could have you put any guests in our waiting room, and then we'll get 15 minutes.
I'll let you know when we're ready. One moment.
If you get a chance, you put that rubric and the letter for Mr. Casey on the screen so everyone can see it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have one moment. Okay, Mayor, we're ready.
Thank you. Okay, so we are executive session. There was possible action, and we are able to now entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Councilor Restucci. I move to accept the city manager's evaluation for 2020-2021.
I'll second the motion. This is Councilor Henry.
Okay, I got a motion from Councilmember Restucci, seconded by Councilmember Henry, to accept the city manager's evaluation for 2020-2021. Is there any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote, please.
Councilor Henry?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Broersma?
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero?
Yes.
Councilor Restucci?
Yes.
Counselor Farmer,
Yes.
Counselor Hicks.
Yes.
Mayor, you have 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. City Manager.
Thank
We
you.
are now done with, well, most of the city manager evaluation. We still got one small part to work on. And as soon as we get that taken care of, we'll convene again and then we'll finalize that portion of it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And to all of council, thank you.
Okay, up next we have items from council members, mayor's appointments for boards and commissions. I don't have any boards or commissions that are open except for our city council. Have we got any applications? I know it's still early, but have we received any applications from interested individuals in that district?
We haven't
Nothing
received
yet.
any applications yet.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye out for those, and know we got a mailer insert going out with our water bill early next month. So hopefully we'll generate some interest at that time. It looks like it's ready to go. So looking forward to that, and hopefully, and we've had an opportunity to put that in social media, Jackie, and that's a few of the places it sounds like. So hopefully, and if council members, you know somebody who might be interested in that district, please encourage them to submit an application. Obviously, the more applicants do we have, the better pool we can go for and select the most qualified, better fit for that position. So please encourage people you might know to apply. We greatly appreciate it. Up next, we have council request status report. Mr. City Manager.
All right. Let's see. We start with disabled parking area at the senior center. We are continuing to seek out grant opportunities, see if there's something that qualifies. We had looked at one here not too long ago that looked promising. However, we found that it could only be applied to accessibility improvements in the city's right of way. And unfortunately, within the parking lot and heading up to the doorway, that wasn't in the right of way. Director Fisher, trying to remember, I think last week you mentioned there might be another opportunity that we're looking at for funding.
Yeah, there's the AARP grant is back open again. So we'll be taking a look at that. I'm trying to kind of sharpen my pencil a little bit on the engineer's estimate we had received from HLA on that. Came in at about 63,000. And so I'm trying to see if there's a way we can kind of do a little snip into that and see if we can get that a little bit lower. That's an awfully large grant for AARP. So, but that's, we'll bring that back before council here at the next meeting or two. I'm not sure which one we'll hit with the application process to get council up to speed on that.
Okay. I'll invite you to continue if there's any updates on the tree replacement plans. I think we were planning, expecting to bring that back later this spring after we've got gotten out of the winter weather.
Correct, yes.
All right. We spoke, oh, go ahead. Oh, okay. We spoke earlier this evening regarding the guardrails on Riverside, and with the safety task order for the safety plan that will set in motion a process to enable us to hopefully qualify for and receive grant funding to put those improvements in place. Scroll on down. With regard to our response to homelessness, as council is aware, we are working on steps to apply our vehicle and nuisance codes in accordance with recent case law and state statutes with respect to two individuals, two homeless residents residing in a city-owned parking lot downtown. It will take some time to comply with all of the statutory case law and code requirements identified by our attorneys. Last week, the police department selected Salgado Towing as towing services provider for the city-owned parking lots. And Public Works has ordered new 24-hour parking signs per Sunnyside Municipal Code 8.28 and RCW 4655 for posting at the 3 lots. And those are set to be delivered and installed by the end of this week. City law enforcement and code enforcement staff then will proceed with actions to have the vehicles comply with city codes or be removed lawfully, subject to proper notice and due process requirements. Police have also learned that some of the homeless individuals camping in the State Department of Transportation right-of-way along Interstate 82 have apparently received or secured some temporarily financial assistance to stay in some local hotels during the recent extreme cold weather conditions, but we don't have information on how long those stays will last, and we'll be keeping council apprised of our progress on these efforts. And on the fire department residency program, Chief, I don't think we've actually put a written update in here terribly recently. I know we provided an update in the monthly report for January, but can you give us a status of where we're at on that? Sorry, Chief Anderson, I didn't give you a lot of warning there. You're still on mute.
There we go. Yeah, no, I had sent something over. I think it may have gotten lost in the shuffle, but I had sent something over the other day. Basically, we had we had an issue with a wall between the original bays of the fire station and the portion that we were remodeling. It required that the architects draw up some new plans. Those plans were ultimately submitted to the plans reviewer. They were accepted, and we notified the contractor late last week, late in the day on Friday, I believe it was, that those plans had been accepted. And then basically now we're just kind of waiting for him to slide it back into their schedule.
Okay, very good. And this last item, Director Alba had prepared an analysis, and we submitted that to council in the week before last weekly brief. That would have been Friday the 12th, I believe. So we completed that request.
Councilor Farmer, do you want to see this stay on for something else, or is it okay if it comes off?
Pardon?
Would you like to keep this on for further reporting, or do you want it to come off?
Oh, it can come off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, City Manager, Mr. Casey, can we add something to the fact of our police reserve program?
Oh, okay.
Something that maybe get some reports to kind of keep us abreast of where we're at as far as staffing. I know it's something that's in the works and it's been coming along, but I just haven't heard anything lately. And I've seen in the weekly reports that we are having some police officers, one lateral transfer and a couple who are going to the academy. And I just want to see where we're at as far as the reserve program, so that way we have some viable candidates in the future that we can hopefully put into the police force and not have to wait months or years into academy training and everything else that needs to happen before they hit the force. Mm-hmm. So if we have some ongoing reporting on that, I would really appreciate it.
Certainly. And in fact, if I remember correctly, in 2019, when the subcommittees were able to be a little more active, I know that was a topic that had been brought, that the chief brought to the Public Safety Committee a couple of times. So we'll be happy to provide an update on that. Okay.
Council members, any additional items you'd like to see on the council request status?
I have some.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Regarding the Brooks study, I would like some information, some feedback on what the city has done. I know there was some suggestions for the community to do, and there was some suggestions for the city to do. I haven't noticed anything. I may have missed it, but I would like some report on where we're at on the Brooks study.
Okay.
And then, well, I guess that would be all for the list. I do have some other things that I can talk about later.
Thank you. Okay. Up next, unless there's another item someone like to add to this. Okay, hear none. Up next, we have other reports, announcements, and/or questions by council. And we'll go down our list, and we'll start with Councilor Hicks.
No questions.
Councilor Farmer.
I have one is and I'm sure many of the other council members get the same emails I get regarding FEMA grants. Have we applied for any, or have we identified anything that we can apply for in the FEMA grant area?
So
And
we
then-
are, oh, so short answer, I'm sorry, I didn't mean
Go
to
ahead.
interrupt if you were. So the FEMA program, until very recently, was a restricted program for 75-25 split, meaning that the city had to incur the expense up front and then could apply for up to 75% reimbursement from FEMA. The way the FEMA grant program is set up is it's about essentially the emergency response. And so it's limited to certain kinds of spending related to things like setting up an emergency operations center, covering staff. Covering staffing like overtime in response to an actual emergency. And so the way the program was initially set up last year, there was really nothing that it was going to cover that we couldn't already get coverage for under the CARES Act grant reimbursement. And we would get 100% reimbursement from CARES Act. So in 2020, most of what we applied for was through the CARES Act. This year, the federal government has issued a directive. We've just gotten word on it that FEMA is now doing 100% reimbursement. We've been in touch with our local area representative. We're trying to get more information. We aren't sure if the qualifying expenditures have been broadened, but if they have been and we have any that qualify, then we'll certainly be applying.
And then the other thing that I have, in your last week's brief, we talked about towing of the cars on the parking lots. I'm concerned, did we go out for proposals? How is the choice made? We have several very qualified towers and towing yards here in town. What was the criteria used, and was there proposals given in order for this contract?
So under state law for purchase services, there is no competitive bid threshold. We can select firms. What the chief did in this instance is looked at service providers that could meet requirements for the size of vehicles that we might potentially need to tow, and that were within Sunnyside, because we did not want to force individuals whose vehicles had been towed to perhaps have to travel some distance outside of Sunnyside. And then we looked at their pricing. The chief made the selection at the beginning of the week. So we did get did contact different service providers, but we're not required to, state law does not require a more formal competitive process for this kind of purchase.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Restucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions are for the Chief of Police. Chief, I've already spoken with the manager about this, and I've been following these two bills. Are you familiar with HB 1310 and HB 1054? 1310 is concerning permissible use of force by law enforcement and correctional officers, and 1054 is establishing requirements for tactics and equipment used by peace officers.
Yes, I've been looking at both of those. I haven't had a chance to look at them lately. I know that WASPIC is very heavy into that and ready to present. So there's been a lot of discussion, not just only those two bills, but quite a few others.
Both bills passed appropriations with the majority second substitute do pass. It was down party lines. Republicans voted against it, but it's out of appropriations now, and it's headed to rules, and it's probably going to go to the floor. And so I'm just wondering if we've looked at what the bill does, and if we need to look at changing our policies or procedures in order to adhere with state law.
Yeah, I just sent those off to the chief this morning after the one got to the floor and the other passed into rules, and sent him attachments with the bill analyses and so forth. So it is something that we're going to be looking at. I just don't think he's had a chance to dive into it deeply yet.
Oh, no worries. No worries. I just wanted to make sure we were aware of it and that we were discussing it.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely that. Yeah, we're definitely looking at it. It is concerning, that's for sure.
I would agree, sir. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Brosma.
No, I have nothing at this time.
Okay, Councilor Henry.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, the only thing I have is the city manager and I attended our AWC City Action Days. And there was a lot of good information. As obviously talked about a few of these House bills that were of concern to a lot of people. And sounds like some are moving forward and some mostly died. So it's one of those moving targets of trying to get bills to move forward. But it was great information. We were able to get our points across, and obviously it was a very well attended meeting. So I was happy to be a part of it, and I'm sure Mr. City Manager will obviously probably go into more detail than I can right now. But that's the only thing I have to report as far as what happened last week or so. Up next, we have let me see, upcoming council meetings. Mr. City Manager.
All right. Well, as you can see, the upcoming agendas are starting to fill up. We have a lot of activity underway. The March 1st workshop will be actually fairly extensive. We have several topics that we want to bring forward for your review and discussion. The first, as I mentioned earlier, we are working on a presentation to update you on the status of the 2020 budget, as well as the 2021 budget. How we are doing year to date, and then kind of start framing the conversation for you for consideration in our first quarter budget amendments, which would typically take place in April, and what some of the opportunities may be in that discussion, given where we currently see ourselves financially for 2021. We also want to have a conversation about how we can best assist council in supporting your recruitment efforts for the Community and Economic Development Commission. Council enacted this new commission last year just before COVID hit, and it's been difficult to recruit. The ordinance specifies representation from certain sectors of the economy and education and so forth. So we want to have a conversation with you about that. And then planning is bringing forward two ordinances for discussion that have come through the Planning Commission process. These are related to the wireless communications and small cell franchise agreement. This is kind of this is coming out of the 5G discussion that has been underway for a couple of years now. So that'll be a full workshop. That may be, if we can get everything put together for the logistics for the community center, that's where we're planning to try to host, at least initially, our in-person components of city council meetings, because we can accommodate both council members and the public there. Unfortunately, the council chambers, our evaluation and with health folks is it's too physically constrained to enable us to meet the health district guidelines. But we're gonna make a go of that over at the community center and look forward to being able to host there. On March 8th regular meeting, we have from Fire Chief plan to bring forward a contract amendment for our Target Solutions training software. We're hoping to bring forward the hangar lease agreement from the port for the airport. Director Fisher will be bringing forward for final discussion and potential action the sewer lift station upsizing agreement, as well as then the 9th Avenue and Lincoln Road. I get our streets and avenues mixed up sometimes. Anyway, lift station pump replacement, those are kind of the combined projects there. And then potentially the wireless and small cell franchise agreement, which actually I think the franchise agreement I got on there is Alba, and that should be Shuttleworth. March 22nd, Director Fisher's been working on some updates to our yard sale ordinance, and we want to have those in place in time, hopefully, for yard sales to come back once we get into like phase 3. And bringing forward an update on our shared leave ordinance. we determined there was a conflict within two provisions that we want to resolve. We'll bring more information to you on that in March. And then as a topic for April, our iWork permitting application software, current go live date target for customers to be able to interface with this permitting software is currently April 1st. We're kind of wanting to help give them an incentive to get that all done on time by scheduling a workshop for you to demonstrate it live on April 5th. And that's about what we've got in the short term. A lot more coming over this summer, but there we go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager. And Councilman, if there's something of interest, please let us know to get it on the agenda, and we'll try to work it in as time permits. And with that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is going to be items from City Manager and Department Heads.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I have a number of hopefully short updates tonight, and in a couple of these, I'm also going to be giving shout outs and kudos to some of our staff. But I'll start with COVID-19, as seems like always. Hopefully this is going to be a shorter and shorter part of our agendas. Sadly today, though, the United States passed 500,000 deaths from COVID-19. Fortunately, Washington State still ranks among the lowest 5 states for infections on a per capita basis. However, Yakima County still has the highest per capita infection rate within Washington State. As of tonight, Yakima County has reported 27,361 confirmed cases, and our confirmed deaths have risen to 375. However, only 13 residents are now hospitalized, and all of these figures do reflect much slower growth trends, which is very good news. As we discussed earlier this evening in the pandemic emergency declaration discussion, our region is now under phase 2 under the state's roadmap for recovery. We're making final preparations this week to reopen our public lobbies consistent with the phase 2 restrictions. And the Yakima Health District will have one of their team members here on site tomorrow to review our plans and give us final direction. We are aiming to reopen on a limited service basis on March 1st. And we also expect to resume limited in-person court proceedings in March. I also want to continue reminding residents about the free community testing site here at our community center in South Hill Park, which is open on Sundays through Thursdays. It's free, it's low barrier, no restrictions, and results are available in about 2 to 3 days. Next, I want to recognize our public works crews who were very busy with the President's Day weekend winter storm. On Friday, before the storm hit, crews applied 350 gallons of de-icer on the major and minor arterials, as well as the streets on the hill. On Saturday, crews put in over 88 hours on plowing, sanding, and salting. They hit all the arterials, the residential neighborhoods, the airport, the COVID testing site, and all city facilities. They applied 81 tons of sand and salt. Then, after the storm kind of gave us a second punch Sunday night into Monday, on President's Day, crews came in and put in an additional 24 hours to clear snow from all our arterials, the hill, downtown, the COVID testing site, and applied another 40 tons of sand and salt to intersections and other problematic areas. With weather warming up rather rapidly over the last day, the wind especially has pretty much removed the last of our snow, so roads are clear now. Also very pleased to announce, and we actually just issued a press release on this this evening, the Washington State Board for Judicial Administration has presented its first Innovating Justice Award to Sunnyside Municipal Court Administrator Vanessa Enquist for her creativity and dedication to keeping our court operating and accessible during the pandemic. Vanessa adapted our outside drive-up payment counter at the Sunnyside Law and Justice Center to enable our court to conduct hearings and proceedings safely. Sunnyside Municipal Court Judge Stephen Michaels nominated Vanessa for this award, which was just established late in 2020 by the Board for Judicial Administration to recognize leadership during the COVID crisis that promotes judicial branch innovation as well as responsiveness to racial equity and access to justice issues. I have an announcement regarding the Civil Service Commission. Last meeting, I had shared that Wallace Anderson had accepted an appointment to the Civil Service Commission. Regretfully, Mr. Anderson informed us that he realized he does not actually meet the commission's residency requirements. He thought he was inside the city. He's just outside of it. We certainly thanked him for bringing this to our attention and for his willingness to serve. Fortunately, we had 2 strong applicants for this vacancy, and I've extended an invitation to Lloyd Hazard, who has accepted. Mr. Hazard is a retired deputy fire chief. He served as the department training officer and as deputy coroner. He is also chairman of the state's Training Officers Association for about 20 years, and he definitely resides in the city. He will serve out an unexpired term through October 3rd of 2024. Also pleased to announce that the police department is filling another patrol vacancy. Our lateral candidate, Cassandra Withers, has passed all testing and background requirements and starts March 15th. She's a Valley native, currently working for the city of Federal Way, but has residency in Moxie. She comes to us very highly recommended and will be, I think, as I said, is starting on March 15th. And then as has been shared at council previously, Chief Escalera is also working with HR on testing for additional candidates to fill our 2 remaining patrol vacancies. Just to give council and public kind of heads up of what I've been up to or coming up among my activities last week, I completed department head evaluations for 2020, attended the YCDA board meeting, the YVCOG monthly membership meeting, and weekly COVID-19 meeting. Also worked on plans for reopening and adjusting our services under phase 2 with the health district and other partners. This week coming up, my calendars includes a virtual meeting sponsored by U.S. Senator Murray's office and YVCOG on regional infrastructure needs, an International City County Management Association webinar on expanding broadband access, a conference call with a port regarding a proposed annexation off of Alexander Road, and a conference call hosted by the Department of Ecology related to our draft fecal coliform monitoring plan. I'll also attend the Columbia Heights Housing Development Open House on Saturday, February 27th. And looking a little further ahead, I wanted to let everyone know I've been summoned for jury duty in Yakima County Superior Court starting March 1st. If called, I'll coordinate with Public Works Director Fisher on administrative duties in my absence. And with that, I'll start going around to the department heads. Since I just mentioned Director Fisher, why don't we start with him?
I just have one item tonight to report on, and that's on the Swan Road water main improvement. They should be buttoning that project up this week. They had a couple days delay with the weather, of course, and but it looks like everything got tied over. The people that were affected by it are back in water, and everything's looking good. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Chief Anderson, it looks like you're still unmuted. Do you want to go ahead next?
Okay, I'm back. I have a couple things, actually, just a couple updates. So we already touched on the resident program. The fire engine went into the paint shop last week. That should be in there for about a week. On the topic of the grants, I was also going to add in that we've been working on 2 grants over here. One is due this Friday. It's fire prevention and life safety grant. These are no match grants. And then a siren grant through another mental health. I forgot what agency it's through, but that's going to be for EMS training and PPE. We have another issue that kind of popped up that I haven't had a chance to talk to Mr. Casey about in detail. The fire department has used that 1982 Chevy Sidevan as a support unit for 21 years. And the vehicle has been on loan to the fire department under the Federal Access Property Program and belongs to the DNR. Under that program, local fire departments are loaned equipment to improve the state's wildland firefighting capability and to improve local fire programs. Well, that thing has been given us all kinds of mechanical problems since 2018. It now requires a new transmission and has some other major mechanical repairs. So I reached out to the DNR back in 2019 when the problems became apparent, and due to its age and condition back then, the DNR really strongly started to encourage us to give it back to them. I told them that we would be more than glad to give it back rather than pay for a new transmission, given its age. But we wanted an M997A, which is basically a off-road, would be an all-wheel drive off-road ambulance in its place. And well, they contacted us last week at the sort of towards the end of the week and notified us that they had received special permission from the military to offer up one of those 997 Humvees. It's going to remain owned by the military and would be on long-term loan from the city if we choose to exchange it. The DNR then came down today and looked at the broke down apparatus and basically said if we can make up our mind in the next day or so, they would like to exchange it and they would take care of disposing of the one that's sitting down in the parking lot at Public Works. So this will be something I'll be working on probably in the next day or so. And then I think that's it. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than glad to answer them.
Okay, Chief Escalera?
I just want to kind of touch base real quick. The last investigators are making pretty good headway with the last shooting we had here just the other night, and also with the last homicide that we had. So they're working pretty diligently on those things and trying to get some things put together for the prosecutor. So we currently have 3 brand new officers in the academy right now. We've got 2 of them that hopefully with, if we don't sustain any further setbacks from COVID, it looks like they probably have about 8 weeks left before they come out for their 15 weeks on the FTO training here. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that happens, and I know they are. They're crossing fingers and toes and wanting to get out of there and get to work. So that is the hope. However, there is a possibility of extending until the mid part of May. That is potentially looming over our heads in the event that future setbacks arise. So that's what we're looking right now.
Director Alba.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. We are currently working on our reopening plan. We have pulled money back out of the bank. We deposited all of the cashier's startup money so that we didn't have excess cash laying around, and then realized that we needed to get it back for making change for customers. We've evaluated our signage and just, kind of went around the office looking and making sure everything looks clean and presentable because we've gotten kind of messy in our closed state. We are also working with the court, and Vanessa has been doing a really good job of ordering PPE and protective barriers so that they can get things running. And I thank you very much for the additional security tonight. That will be very helpful for her and her staff. With Lander's last day being this Friday, we are going to start taking a look at the recreation program and, make sure that we are serving our community in the best way. And, just want to make sure that we get something going on that. Excuse me, sorry, my cats decided to join the meeting. But if I, would like to just say one thing, we fully support the rec program. I want to make sure we have a really, really good one in a strong way. So it is something that we're going to look at really, really hard in the next month to make sure that we deliver the kind of service that we need to there. And
Thank you
that's all
very
I have.
much. Oh, yeah. And Clerk Renteria?
Hello, I have to share a MRSC webinar that's coming up. I'll share my screen with you all so you see the webinar. It's Roles and Responsibilities in Local Government, and it's on Thursday, March 4th from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And this is for council members or just admin staff, commissioners, just anyone that wants to register. The webinar provides the legal essentials of roles and responsibilities in local government as a tool for improving effective communication and ongoing relationships. The legislative and executive branches have different and related responsibilities. Understanding the laws and practices related to these roles, as well as suggestions for working together in gray areas, can help strengthen local governments, is the webinar overview. So if any council members would like to attend this webinar through Zoom or it's just online, please let me know before March 3rd. If you're not able to, Mr. Casey contacted MRSC and they said that they do offer a recording of this webinar, but if anybody is available for that day, please let me know and we can get you registered.
I think it will be a really good refresher for all of us if we have the time available to attend. So sounds like a good webinar to make time for.
All right, I think that wraps up the department head reports.
Okay, so seeing no more business come before council and without objection, I adjourn this meeting at 8:20 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of the night.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.